Margaret could not sleep all night. She lay restlessly in bed, unable to find a comfortable position. She had a deep sense of uneasiness, fearing that tomorrow would bring a repetition of events. For a time she was stuck in this dreadful place. But when morning came, the cell door swung open with a loud metallic sound, and the rough voice of a guard called out to Margaret. The woman, who appeared to have had a hearty meal, announced, jingling her keys. "Well, Margaret, I wish you an easy transition into your new life." The chief, focusing on the now ex-convict, continued to sign the release papers and hand them to Margaret. Margaret, trying to hold back tears of joy, hid her moistened eyes under unruly red strands of hair. "Farewell, my dear. And may you never return to this place. Can you understand what I'm saying?" The chief's imperious voice echoed around the room as he scrutinized the girl with a sharp, penetrating gaze through stylish black glasses. Fondly, she added, "How do you see your future?" "I will be looking for a job first and foremost. I am looking forward to the upcoming summer. I'm thinking about getting a college degree. I'm studying the fascinating field of psychology," Margaret said cheerfully, smiling as if it were a simple matter to enter the psychology department. The chief, however, for some unknown reason, was not surprised. Nodding in agreement, she supported the girl. "Impressive. Impressive. Do you have a goal?" "Of course." Margaret nodded with a cheerful expression, her red hair bouncing up and down like a playful cascade of springs. "I have to go see my mom's sister, Aunt Bridget." "Well, then I wish you luck, young lady." The chief grinned and smiled. The cool fall morning greeted the girl with a sense of freedom, and the cold north wind was chilling her to the bone. A chilly breeze snaked through the short sleeves of her jacket, creeping under her collar. Margaret inhaled deeply, sensing the scent of liberation in the air. With a sense of urgency, she quickly picked up her bag from the ground and hurried to the bus stop, where a shuttle bus was leaving. Margaret strove with all her might to escape from these cramped walls. As the bus carried her onward, playfully splashing autumn puddles in all directions, her heart filled with more and more joy. Margaret bought the most affordable ticket in a shared compartment, choosing the top bunk. She endured the long 8-hour ride to the city she had once called home. 8 years and 8 hours. The wheels of the train echoed with the girl's thoughts, creating a mesmerizing rhythm. She didn't notice how she fell into a dream. Once again, the haunting nightmare returned. A lifeless arm dangles from the bed, pale fingers adorned with blood-red, razor-sharp nails. This vision has tormented her for 8 long years. 8 long years. Everywhere Margaret looked, she couldn't shake off the haunting memories of the moment she realized she had taken Jenny's life. Margaret's family was just like everyone else's. There were probably thousands of such families all over the country. Outwardly, they looked quite prosperous. The father radiated authority, confidently asserting his wishes, and the mother, out of a sense of awe, did her best to please him. And who wouldn't want to make him happy? When things didn't go as planned, he reacted impulsively and resorted to physical violence, delivering sudden blows to his wife's face. Afterward, my mother would kneel obediently before him, her lips stained with blood, wiping them with her hands and repeating her words. "I apologize, Jack. I take full responsibility. I made a mistake. I'll make it up to you." Margaret had witnessed such scenes more than once. She trembled in the closet, gripped by fear. As she grew up, Margaret questioned her mother about why she had not decided to leave him. "He hurts you and me. I don't feel comfortable being in close proximity to him." Mom looked unhappy and depressed. "Your father really is a wonderful man." One day Margaret saw the cause of her mother's tears and suffering with her own eyes. Father walked confidently down the street, proudly holding the hand of a stunning blonde. His face reflected complete indifference. A radiant smile lit up the room. He couldn't take his eyes off his companion, completely oblivious to his surroundings. He was completely oblivious to Margaret, even though he was only a few inches away from her. To everyone's surprise, Mom noticed the happy couple and immediately rushed after them, completely oblivious to their surroundings. Margaret, hearing the screech of brakes behind her, instinctively sensed that those disturbing sounds were connected to her family. Her heart shook, and her feet carried her forward. The girl was attracted by the commotion in the gathering crowd. People were standing near the road. She ran over to look. A man sat with his head resting on his hands, rocking gently back and forth. It looked like the driver of the car. Unfortunately, I failed. Unfortunately, I didn't succeed. She came out of nowhere, you know? It was like she materialized out of nowhere, he kept repeating to himself. At last Margaret realized what had happened. She let out a shrill scream of terror. Mommy! Mommy! Help, Mommy! Margaret's only desire was to throw herself into her mother's arms and cling to her tightly. She believed that by doing this, her mother would surely leave and come home. Please move the young lady. Came a voice from the crowd, and a caring man gently but firmly led Margaret away from the commotion. Mommy died at once. The thought that Mama was gone echoed in the girl's mind. Her father made no attempt to portray any sign of sorrow on his face. He radiated joy, and only a week later he ushered into the house the very girl Margaret had seen on that fateful day. He showed no hesitation when he confronted Aunt Bridget. Auntie. This is Jenny. She'll be living here. The confident blonde entered the room, looking around at her surroundings. Jack, I'm saddened to see how you've lost all sense of shame. Bridget exclaimed with a note of disappointment. It would be wise to consider how your actions will affect your daughter. She's grown up now. She understands. I'm not going away, Margaret said, keeping her eyes on her father. This place is also my home. The girl had a strong dislike for her father and Jenny, who seemed to have no inhibitions and behaved without any regard for others. Margaret had often seen the couple in compromising situations. They seemed to deliberately commit acts that made her blush and feel uncomfortable. Margaret often sought comfort from her aunt, voicing her grievances about the problems she was facing. Darling, why don't you move in with me? Why put up with all this? Come on, let's go. Encouraged her niece Bridget. Nevertheless, Margaret strongly opposed her father and his new girlfriend. This house is of great importance to me, for here I still feel the presence of my dear mother. If I were to leave, my mother would be left alone to witness this disgrace. Margaret felt that by deciding to go away and leave her home, she would not be able to honor and cherish her mother's memory. One day, Jenny confidently and abruptly gathered up all of her mother's photographs and threw them in a trash can that Margaret could not bear to see. Margaret grabbed the young stepmother by the hair with force. Jenny couldn't stand it either and quickly ran her fingers through her stepdaughter's hair. Her father struggled to separate them, gripping Margaret tightly. Jenny triumphantly declared that her mother was gone and slapped her across the face while her father held her tightly. I'm in charge, she shouted, held tightly by her father. Margaret didn't have any plans. She disliked these two men intensely. And that intense dislike spurred her determination. It seemed like an eternity, and Margaret finally arrived home as the sun was beginning to set. Now she was always coming home late, showing her reluctance to come home. Her father was intoxicated and Jenny, in a revealing negligee, was comfortably ensconced on the bed, peacefully dozing off. Margaret decided to call it a day and reached for the pillow. And from there, everything went on as normal. Margaret placed her father's pillow over Jenny's face and held it there until she stopped breathing. Soon the wheezing stopped and dissolved into eternal silence. The pillow and the manicure. They were all there, standing in front of her. Margaret willingly gave all the information to the police. She recalled her father's piercing gaze and the venomous words that had escaped his lips. Beast. You have taken from me everything that is most precious in this life. Everything that brought me joy. And you took my mother, Margaret replied. As the trial drew to a close, the verdict was announced. Aunt Bridget bade her farewell, tears streaming down her face at every word. Oh, my dear girl. What's happened to you? I'll be waiting for you. As the train approached the town where Bridget lived, Margaret turned abruptly, slid smoothly down from the top bunk, grabbed her bag, and headed for the platform exit. That's when she saw her aging and exhausted Aunt Bridget. But how did you know I was coming tonight? I didn't write or call, Margaret exclaimed in amazement, leaning into Aunt Bridget's arms. You were talking about the timing of your coming out. I have been scrupulously calculating and meeting every passing train, replied Aunt Bridget. My dear, please forgive me. I am deeply sorry for my action. Margaret whispered softly in her aunt's ear, unable to tear herself away from their heartfelt embrace. It's perfectly normal, my dear. It is acceptable. May you find forgiveness in the divine presence. Whispered confidently back Aunt Bridget. But I cannot forgive myself, Aunt Bridget, Margaret replied.